Deadly bomb blasts hit Nigeria's main northern city, Kano. We'll have details. Time magazine names Ebola fighters as its 2014 Person of the Year. And a song against gay discrimination in Russia becomes an anthem. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Security remains tight at U.S. facilities around the world following the publication of a U.S. Senate report detailing the CIA's torture of terrorist suspects in the years following the 9/11 attacks. Several U.S. allies are implicated in the CIA program, and the shockwaves of the heavily redacted report are being felt worldwide. Henry Ridgewell reports from London.
The revelations of the CIA's brutal interrogation techniques during the Bush administration have prompted calls by human rights activists and others for U.S. officials involved in the program to be prosecuted.
Really, the ones to blame in this case are the senior U.S. officials that authorized the abuse, knowing that it was illegal. They're the ones at the top that need to be held accountable for these crimes.
The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Counterterrorism echoed those demands. The CIA says the interrogations helped prevent further attacks after 9/11. The Senate report disputes that claim. Several U.S. allies have been implicated in the so-called rendition of terror suspects into secret CIA facilities. Poland's former president admitted for the first time Wednesday that he authorized a CIA base on Polish territory, thought to be at this remote airbase. But the former president said he did not know that torture was taking place.
Strona amerykańska zwróciła się do strony polskiej.
The Americans turned to the Polish side to request a quiet place where it could conduct operations to effectively obtain information from persons willing to cooperate with the U.S. side. We agreed to this.
A 2010 parliamentary investigation in Lithuania also concluded that the CIA operated a base outside the capital, Vilnius, known as Detention Center Violet. That investigation may now be reopened. Britain is also implicated. Questioned on the issue Wednesday, Prime Minister David Cameron said an inquiry was already underway.
So I'm confident this issue has been dealt with from the British perspective, and I think I can reassure the public about that. But overall, we should be clear, torture is wrong.
Many terror suspects were transferred to the US military base in Guantanamo Bay. Among them was British citizen Moazzam Begg, who was released after 3 years. Begg said Wednesday that the recent beheadings of Western hostages by Islamic State militants who dressed the victims in orange jumpsuits can be traced back to the CIA's actions.
ISIS was born in the dungeons of Abu Ghraib. It was born in the dungeons of the Iraqi prisons that were under US occupation. And that's where this hatred and animosity has festered.
There are fears that the terror threat to the US and its allies will intensify amid reports of demands for retaliation from jihadist groups on social media. Former Assistant Director of the CIA, Charles E. Allen, warns the threat has increased.
Yes, it will threaten Americans. Our people need to be protected. Their identities need to be protected. And I'd hate to see any blood come from this, but I fear there will be an attack.
Security has been stepped up at US embassies in Europe and across the world as a precaution against possible attacks. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Residents in northwest Nigeria are shaken after suicide bombers detonated explosives Wednesday, killing at least 4 people in the city of Kano. Kano State Police Commissioner Andrele Shinaba confirmed the 2 female bombers triggered the devices at the Quarry Textile Market. Shinaba says that at least 7 other people are also wounded in the attack. There has been no claim of responsibility, but the attack bore the hallmarks of the terrorist group Boko Haram, which has been fighting for 5 years to establish an Islamist state in Nigeria's northeast. The attack came less than 2 weeks after militants attacked the city's main mosque. Well, a Chadian warlord wanted by authorities for abuses against the population in the country's north has been arrested by UN peacekeepers in the Central African Republic. A spokeswoman for the UN mission says Abdelkader Baba Lade was captured by peacekeepers in the northern district of Kabo, close to the Chadian border. Lade, leader of Chad's Popular Front for Reform, held influence over large parts of northern CAR for about 4 years after being expelled from Chad in 2008 by forces loyal to President Idris Deby. While Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has promoted one of his most trusted lieutenants to a vice presidency post, Justice Minister Emmerson Mnangagwa, a secretive hardliner known as the Crocodile, was elevated to his new position on Wednesday. The 68-year-old has served at Mugabe's side through 5 decades. He's been in every administration since the Southern African nation's independence from Britain in 1980, holding posts as the Minister of State, Security, Defense and Finance, as well as a Speaker of Parliament. He's also been a strong supporter of Mugabe's economic nationalism, especially a drive to force foreign firms to cede majority stakes to local blacks. Well, for more perspective on the political developments in Zimbabwe, we are joined by Blessing Zulu, a reporter with Voice of America's Zimbabwe service. Blessing, welcome once again.
Thank you, Vincent. The pleasure is mine.
Yes, last time you were here and we did talk about Mnangagwa.
Yes.
And tell me, this is supposed to be a ceremonial kind of vice presidency. Mm-hmm. Why is anybody making a big deal out of it?
I think mostly it's because of Mr. Mugabe's age. He is now 90 and anything can happen. So that's why people are saying, in as much as Mr. Mugabe said it was largely ceremonial since he will be running the show. But he is old, you know.
But he has some time. I mean, this position you serve at the discretion of the pleasure of the president.
Of the president,
I
yes.
mean, Vice President Mujuru served 10 years and she was fired.
Yes, it's possible. Anything is possible with Mr. Mugabe. But of course, I think in terms of succeeding Mr. Mugabe, Mr. Mnangagwa now has the inside lane. Mm-hmm. It's possible that he might take over.
Let's talk about him as Crocodile. Mm-hmm. Why is he nicknamed Crocodile?
I think this is a name that goes back to the liberation war, Zimbabwe's liberation war against the rebel government of Ian Douglas Smith. He was part of the so-called Crocodile Gang that was using knives to attack white farmers at that particular time, and he's the only surviving member. So that's where the nickname comes from.
Has this ruthlessness been manifested in the way he has dealt with his opponents or critics of the government in any fashion?
Indeed. I mean, if you look at the opposition, some are actually accusing the opposition of crying more than the bereaved when it comes to the removal of Vice President Joyce Mujuru, because she was viewed, former Vice President rather, as a moderate. And Mr. Mnangagwa, many see him as a hardliner, and some even say he is actually Mugabe on steroids.
You spoke with him?
Yes, that was my colleague Sandra today. Yes.
You guys spoke with him,
mm-hmm.
But he said, well, I'm a good guy. I mean, actually, he claims he's still friends with Joyce Mujuru.
Mm-hmm. That's politics for you. You know, it's a contact sport. But of course, you have to be diplomatic. Those who know him say he's a soft-spoken character, but he's also known as a schemer.
Yes. Now, what does he say he plans to do in the next few years serving as vice president before the next elections?
I think most Zimbabweans are actually concerned by the economic problems that the country is actually experiencing at the moment. I mean, if you look at all the economic indicators in Zimbabwe, everything is headed south. You know, unemployment is close to 90%. So that's how bad the situation is. Industries are closing. So it's the economy. So that's what he's trying to say. He will try to help Mr. Mugabe turn around Zimbabwe's fortunes.
Actually, given his track record, can he change perhaps the perception of what ZANU-PF has become over the years, and perhaps change the mindset of most Zimbabweans, even against the opposition?
I think, anyone who takes over from Mr. Mugabe, he has to change. I think there are no two ways about it because, like I said, the economy is not performing well. And if he wants to continue in that trajectory, he might not last even a month. So I think when Mr. Mugabe eventually leaves office, he will be forced to change. But, of course, many analysts are saying he will not change.
Well, we'll wait and see. We'll have President Crocodile.
Indeed.
Thanks a lot. Blessing for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Blessing Zulu is a reporter with Voice of America's Zimbabwe service. Well, now, doctors, nurses, aid workers, and others who braved the Ebola virus to help victims in West Africa were chosen by Time magazine to be its 2014 Person of the Year. Voice of America's Latza Hook has this story.
The names of the 5 people symbolizing a wider group are not immediately recognizable, but as Time magazine editors explain, they are ordinary men and women who have made extraordinary sacrifices to curb the spread of Ebola in West Africa and from there to the rest of the world.
We really wanted to draw attention to the people who, from the very beginning, when they were being ignored by many bureaucrats and government officials, decided this is a potential danger. It's a potential danger not just to our communities but to the world, and we are going to do what we can to prepare and fight it on the ground.
The virus that spread like wildfire through West Africa earlier this year has killed more than 6,300 people, most of them in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. Close to 18,000 infected people have been identified, although officials say the real number may be higher. This year's Person of the Year will feature 5 covers, each showcasing a prominent figure in the battle against Ebola. Dr. Jerry Brown, a Liberian surgeon, was chosen for the main cover.
Very early on, when he started hearing reports about this disease rearing up, he became very afraid that it might, the way he put it in an interview is that it might wipe his country off the map.
Dr. Kent Brantley, an American physician with the humanitarian group Samaritan's Purse, is one of the others. He got infected himself while helping Ebola patients in Monrovia and was returned to the United States for successful treatment. Humanitarian workers still fighting to save lives in the hardest hit areas say they appreciate the magazine's recognition.
I'm thankful that they have put a spotlight back on Ebola, because these Ebola fighters are fighting right now. And Ebola is not over with. People are dying as we speak. So I'm just grateful that Time magazine put the spotlight on it, because it needs to be there. And these Ebola fighters are heroes.
3 other people on the Time cover will be American Ella Watson-Stryker, a health promoter at Doctors Without Borders, Liberian ambulance worker Fode Gala, and Liberian nurse assistant Salome Karwa. Time magazine editor Nancy Gibbs introduces this year's choice with the proverb, "Not the glittering weapon fights the fight, but rather the hero's heart." Latza Houk, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, Kenyans displaced by election violence hope for justice without the ICC. Stay with us.
I'm Milar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents, a roundup of the world's top stories with analysis from our dedicated reporters. It's really a conversation the same way that you would bring a friend to your home and ask them what's going on. And our correspondents will do that and answer those questions through their own eyes.
That appears a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.
Welcome back to Africa 54. A call to improve the plight of disadvantaged young people worldwide was made by Malala Yousafzai and Kailash Satyarthi as they received the Nobel Peace Prize Wednesday in Oslo. VOA's Al Pearson reports from London.
It was part solemn ceremony and part celebration as the 2 winners received their medals and diplomas. They'll also share the $1 million prize, which they say they will use in their work. At 17, the youngest person ever to win a Nobel Peace Prize, Malala Yousafzai told how her life changed 7 years ago when the Taliban moved into northern Pakistan.
I had 2 options. One, was to remain silent and wait to be killed. And the second was to speak up and then be killed.
And she nearly was. As her campaign to keep girls in school began to get attention, a Taliban gunman went to her school and shot her in the head.
I tell my story not because it is unique, but because it is not. It is the story of many girls.
Several of her friends were there for the ceremony, old friends from Pakistan and new ones from Nigeria and Syria, all with similar experiences. Speaking to VOA's Urdu service, Malala said the Nobel Peace Prize increases her responsibility to work on behalf of children's education everywhere.
मैंने तो खुद को बहुत पहले से ही इस जिम्मेदारी के लिए तैयार किया था, नोबेल पीस प्राइज की जिम्मेदारी के लिए नहीं, लेकिन
I am delighted, and it's a matter of pride for the whole nation because Pakistan has a reputation for terrorism. This Peace Prize conveys the very important message that Pakistanis want peace and support education.
But not all Pakistanis. One conservative group has announced it will hold a day of protests at its schools against Malala winning the prize. Malala's co-winner, Kailash Satyarthi, has been working for decades to free children from bonded labor, mostly in India, but also in many other countries. His organization has freed 80,000 children and provided them with training and education. He said after one rescue, a girl asked him what took him so long.
Her angry question still shakes me and has the power to shake the whole world. What are we doing? What are we waiting for?
He ended with a call to action.
Let us march from ignorance to awakening. Let us march from darkness to light. Let us march from mortality to divinity. Let us march.
Malala also closed with a rallying cry, urging children around the world to join with leaders and work to make this the last generation in which forced labor or the impact of war deprive children of their childhood, education, and potential. Al Pessin, VOA News, London.
Well, the International Criminal Court dropped crimes against humanity charges against Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta last week, citing a lack of evidence. But how do the Kenyans displaced by the violence in 2007 and 2008 feel about this decision? Voice of America's Gabe Josler reports from Rift Valley in Kenya.
It is hard, bruising work that pays next to nothing. Half a truckload of gravel goes for less than $17. But it is the only work available at the Kihoto Displaced Persons Camp outside Naivasha, Kenya, where more than 100 families live on less than half a hectare of land nestled in the Rift Valley. All were displaced by ethnic clashes that followed the 2007 presidential election and led to international criminal court charges against President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. People here have been waiting for years to receive compensation or resettlement. Now that the ICC prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, has dropped charges against President Kenyatta, some think the government will be more free to help. A camp leader, Jeffrey Mwara, wants the charges against William Ruto dropped as well, saying the cases have distracted the country from more important issues.
Only that if they will drop the charges and hold the government of Kenya responsible to resettle all IDPs, that can work.
At first, many victims welcomed ICC investigators, hoping the court would bring closure to a tragic episode in Kenya's history. But some say the process was too political and prosecutors went after the wrong guys.
Ms. Bensouda has wrong suspects, wrong evidence, and wrong witnesses. And the three wrong things cannot make charges to succeed.
More than 600,000 people were displaced by the violence that followed the disputed election between then-President Mwai Kibaki and opposition candidate Raila Odinga. Of those displaced, some 40,000 are still unsettled, an issue that was not discussed enough by the ICC, according to Kefa Mageni, program coordinator for a Kenyan NGO working with IDPs.
We have dealt with the question of suspects. That's okay. The case has been dropped. I don't know the consideration that they took into focus, but now there's also the question of the victimhood. So the reason why I should say the issue of the victim has been ignored all along.
At another IDP camp called Pipeline, residents are better off than at Quijado. The government has already given them money to rebuild better homes, but they say they are still waiting to get access to land set aside for them. Phyllis Muthoni expects President Kenyatta to live up to his promises to resettle those displaced.
We're happy because our lives are going to change. He's now supposed to work for the people without any distractions.
The case against Deputy President Ruto and a co-accused is still underway at the Hague court, but for many victims, trust in the court has faded, and any justice that can be delivered may be too little, too late. Gabe Joselo, VOA News, in Kenya's Rift Valley.
Well, in today's health report, women in the United States are often worried about the effects of prescription medication have on their babies or fetuses. Now, VOA's Carol Pearson tells us more about the new guidelines that are underway.
In the United States, women take between 3 and 5 prescription drugs during their pregnancy, according to the Food and Drug Administration. Other women on prescription drugs want to breastfeed their babies. Millions of other women are trying to conceive. While the drugs might be needed to control anything from high blood pressure to diabetes or mental illnesses, they might harm a developing fetus or a nursing baby. Until now, a grading system classified drugs with letters, A, B, C, D, and X, with A being the least risky, X being the most. But the March of Dimes medical director, Dr. Edward McCabe, says it was confusing.
The system that was used before was not informing either consumers or professionals.
Abilify, a drug used to help people with bipolar disorder, is a grade C drug, but nowhere on the container does it say this. And there are no studies in humans that show what effect this drug might have on a fetus or a nursing baby. In an online press release, the FDA says the 5-letter system will be replaced by new labels with more detailed, up-to-date information, so doctors can help their patients make better choices about the risks of certain drugs before and during pregnancy or while breastfeeding. The March of Dimes works to reduce birth defects and preterm births. Dr. McCabe welcomes the FDA's new ruling, but says what's really needed are more clinical trials and more research.
We need to really recognize that research benefits individuals. Not doing research on pregnant women, women of childbearing age, does not do a service to them. It does a disservice to them. There is a risk of not knowing information, and we need to work and see how we can do this safely. But then once we've determined that it is safe, if a drug is being used in pregnant women, we should be studying it.
Dr. McCabe says the real problem is that for many drugs, we don't have the information we need to make good choices. Carol Pearson, VOA News.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, an anthem against gay discrimination becomes Spotify's top single of 2014. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. The publication Time names Ebola fighters the magazine's Persons of the Year. In Nigeria, 4 people are dead after a double suicide bombing attack at a textile market in Kano. In Zimbabwe, Justice Minister is named as one of 2 vice presidents and is viewed by some as a possible successor to President Robert Mugabe. In Mauritius, voters reject a constitutional change that would give the current president more power by giving victory to opposition party in parliamentary election. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Well, the breakout hit "Take Me to Church" by the young Irish singer Hozier, that has been adapted as a protest song against gay discrimination in Russia, was the most streamed single on Spotify in 2014. Now, the anthem-like tune, which also has been nominated for Song of the Year at the 57th Grammy Awards, has had more than 87 million streams to date on Spotify. It has also logged more than 40 million views for the video version on YouTube. Well, next up, exciting news for royal watchers. Well, cannons roared in Monaco at the announcement of the birth of the next head of the 700-year House of Grimaldi and his sister, Prince Albert II of Monaco, and his wife, Charlene, welcomed their twin babies to the world Wednesday and announced that Jacques, born 2 minutes after his sister, Gabriella, will be next in line to his father. Now, the babies replace Albert's sister, Caroline, as heirs to the throne. And finally, a dramatic air show over Dubai's famous skyline. Now, the spectacular, brightling wing walkers performed for the first time in the skies over the popular beachfront area. Now, the display was part of the 2014 Dubai XCAT World Power Boating Series. The team, who fly two 1930s Boeing Stearman biplanes, performed a series of aerial stunts with the wing walker girls riding on top of the plane's wings, enduring high speed and high G forces. And that is what is trending today. Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night. We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54.
In a lively half hour, news, sports, health, lifestyle information, comments from our viewers. Africa 54, the best for Africa, about Africa. Join us only on VOA.